There are few places where the illusion of control can be wielded as fiercely as within the confines of a homeowners association. In our suburban enclave, the lawns were manicured with a devotion that bordered on religious, and the hedges stood like silent sentinels, guarding the facades of uniform stucco homes. It was a tapestry of order, where deviations were met with disapproval that crackled like static in the air. Here, Karen reigned supreme. Karen, whose name alone seemed to summon the specter of complaint, had an affinity for rules. Her gaze was like an X-ray, scanning for infractions with an efficiency that was both impressive and unnerving. Every misaligned garden gnome or overgrown dandelion was a personal affront she catalogued with meticulous care. I had always found a certain serenity in my own little patch of green, my sprinkler system, a network of pipes and valves coursing beneath the earth, was a testament to quiet efficiency. It whispered in the early hours, droplets glistening like diamonds in the first light of dawn. It was connected, fittingly, to the city water supply, a detail that would soon prove more significant than I could have imagined. It began with a note, a slip of paper tucked under my windshield wiper, ink smudged but legible. Your grass is encroaching on common property. Please rectify. The words were sharp, devoid of warmth, a minor transgression. In the grand scheme of things, I smoothed the note, letting the paper whisper its irritation into the wind before tucking it into my pocket. I made no immediate changes. The grass, after all, simply grew where it chose. Nature had a way of asserting itself. Despite human interference, I preferred to let it be, to watch it sway with the breeze like a living tapestry. A week passed. The sun arced across the sky, casting shadows that crept slowly along the ground. Another note appeared, this one more insistent. Failure to comply will result in a formal complaint. The implication hung heavy, a threat wrapped in bureaucratic packaging. I could almost hear Karen's voice, clipped and precise, echoing in the words. My response was measured, almost passive. I trimmed the edges of the lawn, guiding the grass back within its prescribed boundaries, a gesture of conciliation, perhaps, or simply an acknowledgement of an unwinnable battle. I imagined Karen watching from her window, satisfied with her small victory. But Karen was not one for subtlety, nor was she content with minor triumphs. She was a force of nature, relentless in her pursuit of order, or her version of it. The day she appeared in my yard was one I had not anticipated. Shovel in hand, determination etched into her features like lines chiseled from stone. She dug into the earth with the gusto of an archaeologist unearthing some long-lost relic. Her aim precise and unyielding, she was after my sprinkler system, convinced it overstepped its bounds, encroaching upon her domain. A strange mission, but one she pursued with single-minded zeal. I watched from my porch, a silent observer to her excavation. Her actions were a symphony of futility. Each slice of the spade, a note in a melody of misguided intent. The irony of her endeavor was not lost on me. She did not know, could not know, the true source of the irrigation she sought to conquer. The city water was an ally she had not foreseen, a connection beyond her grasp. Buried beneath layers of soil and bureaucracy, as Karen toiled, the futility of her crusade became my quiet triumph. I allowed myself a small smile, a moment of satisfaction drawn from the absurdity of the scene. In the end, her efforts yielded nothing but disturbed earth and a sense of bewilderment. I remained silent, a spectator to her miscalculation. My lawn, like my patience, remained unruffled. The water flowed, undeterred, a silent testament to the endurance of the unassuming. Karen retreated, her shovel a defeated standard. The quietude of the neighborhood settled once more. A familiar cloak, I returned to my chair, the sun warm on my face, content in the knowledge that sometimes the best response is none at all. Karen's shovel had barely touched the dirt before the chaos began to weave its web beneath the acrid scent of upturned earth. A more pungent aroma brewed, one of control, of a woman who had tasted power and craved more. Her dissatisfaction with my flourishing garden had been palpable for months, but now her actions screamed louder than any HOA meeting motion or neighborhood rumor. The next morning, a letter slipped under my door like a serpent, her first strike in what appeared to be a calculated campaign. The paper bore the familiar, ostentatious letterhead of the HOA, its typeface stark and threatening. I unfolded it slowly, as if the creases themselves might reveal hidden intentions. There it was, a citation for excessive water usage. A laughable accusation considering the previous evening's trespass. I glanced out the window to see Karen's manicured silhouette striding past, head held high, eyes scanning the street like a hawk on patrol. Her satisfaction was almost tangible, lingering in the air like the remnants of expensive perfume. She knew what she'd done, she knew what she'd started, and she was reveling in it. The whispers started shortly after, at the local grocery store. Conversations hushed as I approached, eyes darting away guiltily. The cashier, usually so chatty, merely offered a tight-lipped smile. Karen's tales spread through the neighborhood like wildfire, twisting reality into a tapestry of deceit and drama. Apparently, I was now the villain, a scofflaw drowning the neighborhood in my ill-gotten water. Still, I said nothing. Actions speak louder than words, and Karen's were painting a vivid picture indeed. The irony of her self-righteous crusade against my supposedly excessive water usage was almost poetic, given her clandestine vandalism. With her next move, Karen upped the ante. Another letter arrived, this one demanding I attend a special HOA meeting to address my infractions. It was scheduled during office hours, a blatant attempt to inconvenience me further. The room was filled with residents, their eyes a mixture of curiosity and thinly veiled judgment. Karen presided over the gathering, her smile as sharp as a guillotine blade. I sat quietly, absorbing the absurdity of the situation. The accusations were laid out with the precision of a well-rehearsed play, each one more ludicrous than the last. Excessive watering, non-compliant landscaping, even a suggestion of environmental irresponsibility. The irony was thick enough to choke on. Karen's gaze met mine, a flicker of triumph sparking in her eyes. Here she was, queen of her own drama, orchestrating chaos with the glee of a conductor reaching the symphony's crescendo. But I held my ground, an island amidst the storm. The truth was my armor, and patience, a weapon she could not dismantle. In that moment, surrounded by the orchestrated chaos of Karen's making, I realized something. I had become the calm to her storm, the quiet defiance in the face of her fury. And as the meeting adjourned, with Karen basking in her temporary victory, I knew this was far from over. The clock was ticking, and beneath the surface, a plan was taking root, just as she had dug into my sprinkler system. She was now digging her own grave, one shovel full of pettiness at a time, and as much as Karen believed she was the puppet master, she had yet to learn that the strings were not hers to pull. I watched from my porch through the fractured lens of my old binoculars, capturing the moment Karen kneeled over the gaping wound in her manicured lawn. The early morning sun split through the maple leaves, casting a dappled pattern on the ground that seemed to flicker like an ancient, sentient beast. Her form, a silhouette against this canvas of light and shadow, was an affront to tranquility. She was at it again, meddling where she didn't belong. I sighed, recalling the events that had led us here. The HOA meetings full of pointed fingers and punctuated sighs, Karen's voice, a sharp staccato slicing through any semblance of civility, her obsession with her rules, and her disdain for everything else, including my sprinkler system, which she had deemed an eyesore, a nuisance. That was when I knew I needed a plan, a counter. Her latest offense was the final act of her misguided crusade. She had dug into my sprinkler system, a bold move deserving of a measured response. I documented everything meticulously. Photographs of the mess she made, a journal full of dates, times, and details, the tangled hoses, the churned up earth, the precision of her destruction, all of it. Evidence. But retaliation. It had to be subtle, like a shadow slipping through the cracks of her perfect facade. The secret weapon lay in the pipes she had so carelessly tampered with, connected directly to the city water, a web of infrastructure designed for sustainability. A piece of modern marvel she had unwittingly sabotaged. I smiled at the thought, not maliciously, but with the quiet satisfaction of justice. The city would notice. They always do when resources are squandered. The overuse of water would send alarms through their system. A simple thing, really, when one understood the delicate balance of municipal utilities. As Karen continued her futile excavation, I imagined the letters she would receive, the fines, the inquiries, her indignation turning to confusion, then to panic, a poetic unraveling, all without me lifting a finger. Watching her now, I could almost hear her thoughts, the weight of her self-assigned importance, the need to control everything, all of it, shifting under the pressure of her actions. I almost pitied her. Almost. A breeze rustled through the trees, carrying the distant sound of a siren, a reminder that life moves on, indifferent to our petty wars. I closed my eyes, feeling the warmth of the sun on my face, the coolness of resolve settling into my bones. Patience was a virtue, but timing was everything. I stood up, stretched, and turned to go inside. The game was in motion, and all that was left was to let it play out. I left the binoculars on the porch, a silent testament to the morning's revelations. As I closed the door, the sound of Karen's frustrated sighs echoed through the quiet street. It was the soundtrack of a battle fought not with swords, but with the quiet certainty of knowing exactly how the story would end. In the aftermath of the audacious act that transformed my front yard into a swamp, a calm determination settled over me. The disarray of soil and tangled hoses told their tale. But I took a deep breath. A storm had come, and now it was time to steer its winds toward justice. The HOA meeting unfolded like a slow-motion train wreck, a simmering cauldron of grievances and smiles that didn't reach the eyes. Karen sat at the table's head, her presence as sharp and unyielding as a granite cliff. Her voice was the only sound as she spouted off about community standards and maintaining appearances, each word smooth and practiced, like a well-rehearsed play. My mind, though, was elsewhere. Legal routes and municipal bylaws danced through my thoughts. This wasn't just about a garden hose or a patch of lawn. It was about setting a precedent, about drawing a line in the sand, or rather, the freshly upturned earth. I had already consulted a legal advisor, a friend, really, who knew the ins and outs of property law like the back of his hand. Together, we crafted a plan, swift yet meticulous, like a knife through silk. The city regulations were clear, and the evidence was irrefutable. Each letter was drafted with precision, each document a small fortress built on truth. Karen had overstepped, her shovel, breaching not just the soil, but the very fabric of community decency. I imagined her face when the notice would arrive, officially declaring her trespass and tampering, a storm of legal jargon she couldn't simply wave away with her usual bluster. The irony, of course, was delicious. She had insisted on order, and now her own actions were the catalyst for a disruption she could not contain. The sprinkler system, a simple mechanism of pipes and valves, had become a conduit for justice, its connection to the city water, a crucial point that turned her folly into a municipal offense. I kept my distance at the meeting, my silence, a weighty presence. I watched the unfolding drama as if perched on the theater's balcony, the actors unaware of the script change that approached. Karen's command faltered when the conversation shifted. The topic, unauthorized alterations to personal property. For once, her voice was not the loudest. Whispers rippled through the room like a breeze through autumn leaves. I sat back, hands folded, the calm eye of the growing storm. My moment would come, but now was the time to let the whispers build into a chorus. A few days later, the letter arrived, delivered with the casual brutality of a well-aimed arrow, not to me, but to her door. Slipping through the slot like a secret best shared in the light, I imagined her reading it, the realization dawning that her actions were now officially chronicled and contested. There was no satisfaction in her potential discomfort, only the quiet assurance that balance would be restored. I had not sought revenge but resolution, a return to the unspoken agreement of neighborly respect. In the end, it was the city, not the HOA, that held the cards. The irony was profound. Karen, queen of the association, now found herself subject to a higher authority she could not bend to her will, and so the wheel of justice turned, steady and inevitable, like the rhythmic sweep of a sprinkler over an undisturbed lawn. The morning sun had risen stealthily, its warm rays slipping through the blinds and spreading a calm over my living room. It felt like the universe was holding its breath, waiting to see how the final act of this neighborhood drama would unfold, as if the chirping birds were in on the secret. Their melodies trailed behind me as I made my way outside. The front yard was a battlefield, but not the chaotic mess of the past few days. Instead, it was the aftermath, the silence after the storm, where calm hung like a delicate tapestry. The grass, still damp with dew, shimmered in the light, a sharp contrast to the loose earth. Where Karen had dug up the sprinkler system, the pitiful trench she'd left behind was a scar on the otherwise pristine landscape, a reminder of her reckless vendetta. Her misadventure with the city waterline had drawn attention. Much like the aftermath of a fireworks display that had gone awry, the city workers had been swift and efficient in their repairs, their orange vests moving like ants in the yard, restoring order with a professionalism that belied the absurdity of the situation. The water was back, and with it, a sense of normalcy. The HOA meeting that afternoon was inevitable, a scene set for resolution. The community center was abuzz. Neighbors gathered like actors waiting in the wings, each with their own role to play. As I entered, I could feel the energy shift, a mix of anticipation and the ghostly remnants of animosity. Karen sat at the head of the table, her usual seat of power, but today, it seemed more like a throne of thorns. Her demeanor was deflated, the bravado she'd worn like armor now a cracked facade. She was silent, apart from the sharpness in her eyes that flickered with the remnants of defiance. No one needed to utter a word. The electricity in the room said it all. This was the moment the neighborhood had been waiting for, the denouement of the absurd saga that had captured everyone's attention. I imagined a judge's gavel striking metaphorically as the board, calm and composed, took their places. Decisions were made quietly, with the kind of serene authority that doesn't need to shout to be heard. Karen was sidelined. Her reign of petty tyranny quietly dissolved like sugar in rainwater. The community was restored, bonds mended over shared glances and nods of understanding. As the meeting wound down, resolutions settled in the room, tangible and comforting. I stood by the window, watching the sun dip below the horizon. The sky was a canvas of soft purples and oranges, and I couldn't help but think how everything, even the most chaotic of tales, eventually finds its balance. One by one, neighbors filed out, each with a newfound sense of peace. Like actors stepping off stage after the curtain call, I lingered a moment longer, breathing in the tranquility. Karen's shadow passed over the threshold, and for a brief second, our eyes met. Her gaze was a storm calmed, the tempest within subdued at last. The streetlights flickered on, casting a gentle glow over the neighborhood, now a symphony of harmonious whispers. I turned to leave, feeling the weight of the past days lift. The world righted once more. Outside, the air was cool and fresh, carrying with it the promise of new beginnings. The peace was palpable. And as I walked home, the only sound was the soft rustle of leaves and the steady rhythm of my steps on the sidewalk.